My biggest mistake of 2021 was buying Solana ecosystem projects, thinking they would outperform Sol. Boy, was I wrong. Just look at the price charts. They look like a slow but steady rug pull. And after careful reflection, I think I identified 3 reasons why they perform so poorly. I want to share those reasons with you and discuss what it means for the future of Solana. I promise this video will make you a savvier investor, so if that's your goal, then strap in my friend and let's roll the intro. So I actually aped into a bunch of Solana ecosystem projects like Serum, Saber, etc. back when I made this video in September. My thesis was simple. I missed out on the Solana rocket ship, so I figured that buying its ecosystem projects would get me better returns in the future. Makes sense, right? I mean, that happens all the other time in other ecosystems. Now, while I was doing my research, I did notice some criticism floating around about Solana ecosystem projects. Something about their fully diluted value being too high, or how VCs owned a huge chunk of their supply. But prices were going up, so I largely brushed those aside and ignored them. But after a few months of holding these projects, I noticed something peculiar. When Sol pumped, these ecosystem projects would pump less. And when Sol dumped, these ecosystem projects would dump way more. It was the worst of both worlds. During the first few dips, I faithfully stuck to my thesis and added to my stack of ecosystem projects. But after I saw this peculiar price action go on for several months, I couldn't take it anymore and I capitulated my ecosystem holdings back into Sol. I was super fortunate to do so because those projects kept on underperforming afterwards. While I moved on to greener pastures, something was bothering me because I never figured out why my thesis was so wrong. That is until a few days ago when I came across this meme on Twitter and a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, wow, those criticisms look spot on and they can potentially explain why Sol ecosystem projects did so bad. But you know me, I'm not the type to just take some rando's word for it. I like to do my own independent research to see if it's fair. So that's exactly what I did, and I want to share with you what I found. I'll start by dissecting each of the 3 reasons why these projects did so poorly. I'll share some tips of what to avoid in the future, and I'll end up with why there may be hope for them after all. But before we dive in, a quick shout out to our video sponsors Prime XBT. With their Covesting yield accounts, you can get high yield on your crypto coins. They do this by connecting you to multiple third-party DeFi and CeFi projects to get the best APY. Best part is, you don't need to be tech savvy to use these accounts. They do all the integrating and setup for you in the background. The process to get started is super simple. You choose the coin you want to stake, select the amount, and click Stake Now. And you can easily manage your accounts and monitor daily earnings in the My Account tab. Finally, you are free to add and withdraw funds at any time. So if any of that resonates with you, check them out using my link down below. Alright, so the first and arguably biggest criticism stems from this part of the meme, where it points out how many Solana ecosystem projects have a low circulating supply, while their total supply is ginormous. This also speaks to a larger concept called fully diluted value, or FDV for short. Basically, that's equal to the current price of a token multiplied by its total supply. It's the market cap of a project, assuming that all its tokens are released into circulation. And the criticism here is that projects with a high FDV and a low market cap are severely overvalued and may have poor tokenomics. If we go to CoinMarketCap and filter by Solana ecosystem projects, we see that most of them fall into this category, aka their fully diluted value is like 10 to 50 times more than their current market cap. And that's not really normal if you remove the Sol ecosystem filter and look at all the other projects out there. As the narrative shifted from FDV is a meme to high FDV is a huge red flag, I had enough and decided to take a look for myself. So I collected a bunch of data points and made a table to compare FDV, current market cap, and price performance for a handful of these Solana ecosystem projects. Let's take a look, shall we? Alright, so here's a spreadsheet that I made. It took quite a bit of time to get all this data, but let's start in this top part with the purple background because these are the Solana ecosystem plays that I gathered, and in the columns I have market cap, fully diluted value, and then an FDV divided by market cap ratio, which is like the multiple, how much greater its fully diluted value is compared to its current market cap. And then I have the all-time high price, current price, percentage drop since then, and then 60-day performance, 90-day performance. Just two other ways to look at performance besides delta from all-time high. One thing just pops up at me. Some of these have huge fully diluted values, right? Like 29 billion for Serum. What the heck is going on? And so this is like enormous multiples in terms of FDV compared to market cap. As you can see, a lot of them had massive drops, like 77%, 85% since all-time high, 90%. It's not necessarily in perfect order, but one takeaway is if you largely group these by like, let's say over 10 FDP per market cap ratio, you do see that they're generally greater than other ones, at least with this limited data set. And on the bottom portion, these are other ecosystem plays from Avalanche ecosystem or Phantom ecosystem to I consider roughly similar to Solana ecosystem, right? And one thing that jumps out is that their FDV to market cap ratio is much lower. Like they're all under 10. And I got like the most well-known projects here, similar to what I did up there. I didn't only choose ones that fit the bill here, by the way. They still had massive drops though. But one thing that stood out to me is that this data set is kind of more ordered, right? Like the bigger the multiple, the more the drop from all-time high. And then the less the multiple, the more reasonable it is, the less of a drop. Might be just be coincidence, but this is the data. If you want to take a closer look yourself, I'm going to leave you a link in the description below. Okay, so taking a step back, it really seems like high FDV to market cap ratio is bad for long-term price action. I think intuitively it makes sense because I see FDV as a project's maximum potential. If a project launches with a fully diluted value already in the billions, then that means we have to somehow justify that its market cap will reach that someday. And for many of these young ecosystem projects with like 0 users, I just don't see it. But wait, there's more to the story. Because while FDV is important, it's not the only factor we have to consider. We also have to look at how tokens were initially distributed, at what prices did early investors get in, and how aggressive their unlock schedule is. And that leads me to the second criticism of Solana ecosystem projects, represented by this part of the meme. Basically, it's making fun of these projects for having the same group of VC investors, which seems harmless, but the deeper criticism is that these VCs all get super favorable terms compared to retail investors. Like they get a large percentage of the tokens and at a super low price. If we take a look at Serum as an example, they had a private sale which allocated 4% of their tokens to VCs at the low price of 5 cents per token. And you may be like, 4% isn't that much, stop tripping, bro. But when we look at their initial distribution, we see the team gets 20% and their partners and collaborators get a whopping 27%. So it's easily over 50% of their token supply that's allocated to insiders instead of spread across their community. And if we visit their website and scroll down to their partner section, lo and behold, it's the who's who of big name funds and VCs. Also, because these private investors got in at 5 cents, they are up over 58x on their initial investment, even after the price dropped 77% from its all-time high. And the last piece of the puzzle is their aggressive unlock schedule. Serum started with 90% of their tokens locked up for 1 year, after which they are released linearly over the next 6 years. That is a ton of tokens that could potentially be dumped on the market. Taking a step back, what does all of this mean? Well, for Serum, they have insiders holding a large percentage of the tokens, and their unlock schedule means that there will likely be a ton of profit taking going on, given that early investors are still up insane multiples from when they got in. So with all these factors in play, it doesn't look great for any retail investors who buys on the open market. And it's not only Serum, that was just one example. A lot of Solana ecosystem projects have similar characteristics. Just go take a look for yourself. But lastly, for the third criticism, we have to turn to this part of the meme, which jokes that FTX lists perpetual futures for these projects and their price charts go down only afterwards. There's a couple ways to slice this, but one theory is that FTX, who has close ties to the Solana ecosystem through Sam Bankman-Fried, is trying to make it as easy as possible for insiders to maximize profits in their ecosystem plays. Because with perpetual futures, you can go long or short. So if you're an insider with heavy bags, you could theoretically go short on FTX for these Sol ecosystem projects. Then you dump your heavy bags and make money from selling and from your short position as price drops. It's a win-win for the insiders. Now, that is definitely speculation on my end, but one thing I noticed when scrolling through all the perpetual futures markets on FTX is that they definitely prioritize listing these Sol ecosystem projects. They have perps for Radium, Serum, Mango, Oxygen, and even Media Network, which is some small no-name project in the Solana ecosystem. Whereas I don't see any perps for similar projects in the Avalanche ecosystem, Phantom ecosystem, or Terra ecosystem. You tell me, is this just a crazy conspiracy theory, or do you think FTX is doing this to benefit insiders? Either way, these three criticisms are largely dominating the narrative surrounding these ecosystem projects these days. I see so many tweets of people expressing their disappointment towards these projects and vowing to avoid them in the future. In response to the original post, the CEO of Solana, Anatoly Yakovenko, even commented with the skull emoji. He may be joking, but I recommend that he takes these criticisms more seriously because they may affect the future of Solana. Like, of course they can have the best tech and the best user experience in the world, but if all of their ecosystem projects get a bad reputation and everybody avoids them, then Solana's not going to take off. So I hope Solana leaders push teams in their ecosystem to improve and just keep in mind their loyal community when designing their projects. I do think there's some light at the end of the tunnel though, because some newer Solana projects have been listening to us and changing for the better. Like Genesis Go, they are going with a fair launch, and they tweeted this recently saying, "No VC tokens with unlocks to research, research made easy." I love that, and I hope more projects follow their lead, because you have no idea how hard it was to research some of these projects. Like, what were their private sale details, and what prices did VCs get in at? I couldn't find any of those details at all for some of those projects. It's almost like they don't want us to know, because if we did know, then we would stay far, far away. Anyways, I hope this video gave you an idea of how important it is to understand a project's tokenomics. Because even if it has amazing tech and amazing partnerships, bad tokenomics could mean down only for a token's price. So if you want to learn more about tokenomics, watch this video that I made before, or watch this one if you want to hear my biggest concerns about Solana itself. I'll see you on the next one, and cheers!